It was schoolboy. You talked about pub football there at the start. I mean, I'd like to apologise to the pub teams. Tactics wrong. They have lost their faith in this manager. To me, he's done.
A disgusting performance, more befitting of a pub team. That is how Gary Neville described Manchester United's shambolic showing as they lost 3-0 at home to Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday. And with Erik Ten Hag no doubt sweating over his future at Old Trafford, we are joined in Tactics Exposed studio once again by Sun Sport's very own tactical guru, Dean Scoggins. And Dino, you're going to tell us why Erik Ten Hag and his team were left wanting from a tactical point of view, as well as from a desire and effort one, as so many people are accusing them of. You've got 5 things for me, as usual. What are they?
Well, first of all, why were they overrun? Why were Bruno and Xerxes totally confused by Bentancur's brilliance is the first point. Erik Ten Hag's got it all wrong. We had Maddison sending Ugarte into a total spin. What's the opposite of having someone in your pocket? The player playing 3 positions in one for Spurs, and we'll come back to him as well Solanke took United for a ride. Anana's sprint tactic. Something went right for United. It was the sprint tactic. And then those horror mistakes for Spurs' goal, despite Mickey van der Ven's pace. And you can see why I'm smiling.
yeah, I can. Dean Scoggins, the Tottenham fan, your beloved Spurs, a great win. Look, before we get into the tactical points you've made there that you want to have a look at, we can't deny, can we, that for the second Monday in a row, we're standing in the studio talking about a Super Sunday game that was hugely impacted by a red card.
Absolutely, yeah. But the red card, Spurs had done them before the red card. And I'm almost disappointed that the red card came, because then it takes a little bit of away from how poor United were before that, and also how good Spurs were. But really, we need to look at a few things to begin with. First of all, how they were set up. But they weren't well drilled. They weren't organised. They weren't chasing the ball. They just weren't Man United. It was absolutely woeful. And from the beginning, right, you can straight away, we'll look at their setup. They basically play in a 4-4-2. They play in a position where Arsenal did it the week before, a couple of weeks before in the North London derby. They do it quite a lot. Teams defend in a 4-4-2 shape. Nothing wrong with that if you get that shape right. But Ten Hag's got it all wrong. If the instruction is, which it may have been, to let Romero and Van der Ven have the ball. We talked about this last time. Let them have it in a certain area. You then can't just let the holding midfielder have the ball. So Bentancur couldn't believe his luck. The space between Man United's front 2 and their midfield 4 is an error that I'm sat watching the game after 1 minute going, Spurs are going to win.
Yeah.
Spurs are going to win here, because that space means that Bentancur just goes, oh, this is nice. I've got all the space in the world.
So
the ball goes from Van der Ven on the ball.
Yeah.
Man United off the ball it's disgraceful, is what it is. Is that you've got 2 defenders who are thinking, are they going to press? Are they not? They didn't. And then Bentancur, the other side of them, just goes, well, if I run that way, then the ball gets played to the right, and then I'll just get it off the other defender, and then I'm turning around and facing play. And now we're 9v8 going the other way.
Yeah, you've already got that overload.
Exactly, you've already beaten them. And then you've got Kulusevski being marked by Kobbie Mainoo and Maddison being marked by Ugarte, and Bentancur's got the ball, and we're 1 over straight away. The attacking team's thinking, we're 1 over. And then what they did, Bruno decides, I don't like this. So he leaves his post, starts chasing the ball. And then, of course, he chases the ball. Pedro Porro thinks, well, this is nice. He's just left his position. Romero gives it to Pedro Porro, and Spurs come inside. They got 2 men over. And so it was just absolutely shambolic. And either Erik Ten Hag is saying, don't press the ball, or he's saying, we're in a mid-block. Right. OK? So let's explain a mid-block, first of all. So a mid-block means that you're not doing the high press like Spurs do and going right for the ball high up the field. You're sitting in a compact shape, but you're not parking the bus. Okay, you're somewhere in between those two. But you can't do that when you've got forwards way in the opposition's half and defenders who are way in your own half. You're creating basically this 50-yard box in the middle of the field where Spurs just ran right.
And therefore huge corridors of space for the opposition to operate.
Exactly that. And so, you know, Spurs have got players who operate in between the lines. And Man United just went, here's the freedom of Old Trafford.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the phrase I was going to use. James Maddison looked like he'd played 400 games for Manchester United at Old Trafford, didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
But so just sort of clarify this for me then. What you've explained there, are you of the opinion that that was Ten Hag's tactic and it was just it's a terrible tactic, or that's not what he was trying to do, and that actually his players either don't trust the system or they're the ones that have let him down by what you're hinting at there, Bruno, by the sounds of it, just totally lacking discipline?
Yeah, and Xerxes as well. Xerxes doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. And so there's two ways of looking at that, and neither of them are very good from a Ten Hag point of view. Yeah. Either the tactics are wrong, bad, or the players aren't listening to what you're saying and therefore they haven't carried them out correctly. We've got different teams playing in different ways, right? We can look at Chelsea, we can look at Brighton, we can look at Spurs from a pressing point of view, where they go. You can look at Arsenal and how they drop and low block. City are probably the only team who can adapt it very well in-game very quickly. United were nothing.
No.
There was nothing there. And if you're going to play 4-4-2 in a defensive shape, the space between your midfield and your attackers and between the defence and the midfield has got to be narrow. And it was just wide open. And that was before, Mickey van der Ven's surging run. But yeah, Spurs had them all over the place, and especially in midfield.
So just quickly before we move on to point two, which one do you think it is? Do you think it's Ten Hag not knowing what he's doing? Because it's a stick widely used to beat him that no one has a clue what United's tactical philosophy is under Ten Hag. A few Man United fans will get quite annoyed by such shouts, but what do you think it's that, or do you think it's the players just totally lost faith in him, going, this isn't working and I'm going to do my own thing, or I don't respect him enough to listen?
Well, I think he got it totally wrong against Spurs. Totally wrong, and that's his fault. It's his team. They've got to. I'm not saying that you go and high press Spurs at all, but you're at home. Yeah. Actually put some pressure on the opposition. They're playing at Old Trafford. At the beginning of the game...
it's Tottenham, it's not City, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. Lads, it's Tottenham, after all. And it's, they've got to give it some going forwards as with the ball. But when you don't have the ball, if you get into a shape where we then can counter-attack... They did it in the cup final against Man City. Get into a compact shape and then spring the wingers away afterwards. Rashford and Garnacho, completely anonymous. But yeah, it was really bad, really bad.
Right, point two, James Maddison sending Ugarte into a spin. He really was, Maddison, cock of the walk, wasn't he? He was like brimming with confidence, picking up the ball, driving, making things happen, a player really on his game. But do you feel as well, it was kind of made quite easy for him by the opposition?
Absolutely. And there's three things to look at here, right? Spurs play in triangles, and which Man United didn't do. And to take it on from the point we just made in point one about the 4-4-2 and the gaps between them, not only were the gaps between them wide, but they were flat.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
they're
United again.
When defending. So they're a flat 2, and then they're a flat 4, and then they're another flat 4.
Sounds a bit 1995.
Absolutely, it does. On the back of a packet of B&H. It is absolutely that. And so Maddison decides, I'll just hang off the back of Ugarte. I'll just stay in that little position in there. So Ugarte's having to, all the time, he's clearly not communicating very well with Dalot behind him. He's looking for him all the time. He doesn't know where he's gone. There were times where Ugarte was over with Kobbie Mainoo as a 2 because he's been attracted to the ball, and Kulusevski's in that little area in there, and Maddison's got these enormous areas of space around him. So he just got led a merry dance. He was all over the place, and it was almost as if, at times, Spurs had too much space and they didn't quite know what to do when they were in that much space. They just weren't used to it. But if you remember the North London Derby show we did, we talked about where Spurs attack. Okay, they attack down those inside channels on the corners of the area. And so as a central midfield player, you've got to block those runners going through there. Maddison's going to get it on the inside left for Spurs, so the defensive inside right for Man United. And Kulusevski's going to pick it up on the inside right for Spurs, the inside left of Man United. You have to block that corridor there. But because they didn't have the press right, because the gaps were all over the place, all of a sudden, the two of them were trying to cover both sides. Yeah. So in this instance, it wasn't a lack of effort from Ugarte or Mainoo. It was just horrible tactically. Yeah. And about 5 minutes after it starts, what I'm thinking, I've got to say, as a Spurs fan, I'm hoping he doesn't do it. But what I'm thinking is all he's got to do is drop Bruno in there and make a 3. So just to stop for, 5 minutes for Spurs getting the ball. And Ten Hag stood there on the touchline, arms folded, sort of moody and not doing anything.
Well, just to clarify, first of all, Dino, it was hanging off the back of Ugarte.
It was,
you said Maddison's doing. Yeah,
yes.
OK, good. One thing we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, right, was Liverpool and how well they do in their midfield under Arne Slot. I think it was the Man United game, wasn't it? And how they're doing the polar opposite of what you're talking about. They have the 2 players in midfield, very, very, very disciplined, and they're going as one.
Yeah.
And you have Gravenberch's obviously floating, but you're not in a position where both players are just chasing either side of the pitch.
No, absolutely. And we'll show a grab of this as well. But Spurs are a little braver than Liverpool, even more so. The Ange ball philosophy, if you like, even without the ball, is a little braver. So Spurs, you mentioned there, Liverpool quite rightly play with a 2 in there and then the 4 ahead go. But Spurs do 4-1. 4-1.
Yep.
And so at times they have 5 players pressing the ball. But they have a trigger, OK? Tottenham have a trigger and Man United don't. So Spurs, when Solanke goes, and we'll do a show on Solanke at some stage because he's really, really changing how Spurs play. But when he goes, they go, right, he's made a good decision. We're going with him.
Yeah.
So the wingers then go to the fullbacks. Kulusevski and Maddison go to the other players in front of them, and they know that Bentancur behind them will pick up the only player that's left. And they're trying to force Man United to go long or just give them the ball back or, in an even better scenario, nick it in the area. Yeah. And Man United did not have a clue of how to break the Spurs press.
And it's not like Erik Ten Hag would have been surprised that Ange Postecoglou's team press high up the pitch. It's what he's been doing since he arrived at Tottenham.
Absolutely, yeah. It's no surprise, but then we talked in a previous show, if you remember, about Mazraoui. Yep. And we've been saying for ages that Man United don't have enough patterns of play. And, a pattern of play being, we know the opposition are going to try this. If we actually get players in the position where we can play out, there's a moment where Spurs press with 5, Onana's got the ball, he's got nowhere to go, and Mazraoui on one side and Dalot on the other are the wrong side of the players who are pressing. If they just come into a channel to receive the ball, then they can get out of there. So in the area, in the midfield, in the attack, it was just all wrong.
Yeah, and just while we're on Maddison, quickly, Dino, he was the player Bruno Fernandes brought down. This is the Tactics Show. If you want to hear a little bit more about the decision, check out the latest episode of Whistleblower with ex-Premier League referee and Sunsport columnist Mark Halsey. But just quickly, while we're on it, what did you think?
I didn't think it was a red, but he's frustrated because Maddison's getting the free rein. Realistically, those 2 are the players that are the playmakers for either team. Maddison's running the show. Bruno can't get a kick. So he has a kick at Maddison, and it's probably a yellow, but it's his own fault.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, the next point. Players playing in 3 positions for Tottenham. Manchester City are sort of the kings of the utility player, with players who can play in all different parts of Pep Guardiola's complicated system. You reckon Spurs are trying to mimic that? Yeah,
and Dejan Kulusevski's the man. I mean, He was playing right wing for the first year that he came to the club, and then again in last year under Ange, in his first season, predominantly played as a right-sided player. He loves playing as this inverted 10, if you like it now. It's
Isn't just it these days? Every position can be inverted.
Yeah, it is, but it's 2 10s, right? So this is where he's playing more than.
He's number 10 already in the middle.
Yeah, he is. But that's where Spurs play 2 10s, right? So you've got Maddison one side and Kulusevski the other. Yeah. That's the bravery. But the reason that it's being so successful is because Maddison, we know, goes wandering. Yeah. We'll see from his touch map and his heat map, he touches the ball all over the field. He's everywhere. And the fact he comes off a lot between the 70th and the 80th minute is credit to him because he's just run himself into the ground.
Which is what Ange wants.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got other players to come on who can help out and do that, is Ange's message. So that's great. Win the game early and then we bring players on. But Kulusevski, I mean, he doesn't come off. Flipping hell, he's so fit. It's absolutely unbelievable. But what he's doing, because Maddison is going into these other areas, is he's then becoming the number 10. And we'll show his heat map here, where he doesn't just hang in that inside right position. And again, we identified that Arsenal nullified Spurs at the Tottenham Stadium by blocking the inside runs. And I was very frustrated that Tottenham didn't get someone much more in the number 10, the traditional number 10 position. Kulusevski did this at Old Trafford. He got right close to Solanke. He's playing around Solanke. And as a pair, Solanke and Kulusevski took the two centre-backs for a ride. Yeah. And it was, it was schoolboy. You talked about pub football there at the start. I mean, I'd like to apologise to the pub teams, because they wouldn't have been as bad
Gary
as
Neville
that.
quote, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there'll be some pub teams saying, well, I don't do that. It was like Solanke was going, come on, come with me, follow me down this little garden path. And the centre-backs are going, OK, then we'll come out with you. And then Kulusevski goes in behind.
So just one thing on that, because you've mentioned about Solanke in this point as well. When Tottenham played Arsenal, there was that huge chasm in behind. Solanke basically just playing on his own, not enough service, no one close enough to him to have an impact. The fact that he was able to do that at Old Trafford, once again, good tactics by Ange, and perhaps he's watched that episode of Tactics Exposed and thought, yeah, that's what I should be doing. Or is it Ten Hag and Manchester United enabling Tottenham or letting Tottenham be able to do that with their own setup?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, I've got to give some credit to Ange, mate, obviously. And he's obviously said we need Kulusevski closer to Solanke to cause more problems for two centre-backs who are playing against one. And what it does as well is create indecision for the holding midfielder. Am I supposed to mark Kulusevski? Or is the centre-back picking him up? Because he's in that sort of corridor of uncertainty, if you like, between the two. But also, Man United have just allowed it to happen again because of those spaces we talked about. You know, if that's tight and you've got nowhere to go in between those lines, naturally the midfielder will come, or the number 10 in Kulusevski will come the other side of the Man United midfielders, where they want him to be, facing his own goal. But he kept taking the ball on the half-turn in the spaces in between. And not only that, when Brennan Johnson bursts off the wing and comes infield and takes that sweeping pass inside, Kulusevski then goes out to the right-hand side and plays as the right winger. So Kulusevski's playing on the wing, he's playing up front, and he's playing number 10. He scored a goal, he set up another one. And just one last thing before we move on. Manchester United this season have had players Rashford, Mount and Garnacho create 4 chances in the whole season at Old Trafford. Casemiro created 5, again, in the whole season. Kulusevski has created 6 chances before Bruno was sent off in the 40-odd minute, and 9 chances in the game. It was
6 and then 9 in total.
9 in total, yeah. So, an all-action display, and he tore Man United apart.
That is damning reading for Ten Hag and United. Right, Andre Onana's sprint trick that tricked Timo Werner. A little bit of a positive for United fans?
Yeah, we found one. We found a positive. Man United fans, it took us a little bit of time. But look, I don't know about anybody else, but I am not gambling on Timo Werner finishing a chance at any point.
Unbelievable. I was texting you about that during the game. As good as Tottenham were, they were gilt-edged. It's just like watching them at Chelsea all over again.
I mean, if Heung-min Son is playing in that game, I think we're talking about a 6 or 7-0, and I don't think that's being harsh.
And this is coming from Son Heung-min's biggest critic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe we'll touch on that in another show before you throw me under the bus there. But yeah, and Onana's trick, he basically, it's very clever, but it's because it's Timo Werner. And he as soon as the ball gets played through to Werner, he's waiting for Werner to look up. And then when Werner looks up, he sprints off his line. And then as soon as Werner looks back down again, Onana stops. And then he's in a position to make a save. He's panicked, Werner. He's confused him a little bit. And look, I mean, we can debate whether he was in a great position for the Kulusevski goal, but let's be fair to Onana. 2 of those saves from Werner, a couple of others before that. He was the only positive. Yeah,
well, look, I'm glad we've saved this one till the end. Best till last. But the horror mistakes for Spurs' first goal. I mean, Mickey van der Ven, a brilliant run, amazing from a centre-back. We all know, we've all seen the graphics, that he's the fastest centre-back ever to live in the history of football. But that huge corridor of space, and in all the tactical terminology I'm learning off of you on this season's Tactics Exposed shows, the corridors of space is the one I like the most.
Absolutely.
But honestly, those Manchester United players might as well have rolled out a red carpet for Van der Ven. The fact he can pick up the ball as fast as he may be, and whether he's a centre-back or a winger, a goalkeeper or one of the stewards, no one should be able to pick up the ball in their own half and finish on the byline to be able to get what was an amazing crossing. Talk to us about that.
There's so many mistakes. Let's just put it out there for a second. Mickey van der Ven, amazing, okay? Amazing performance, amazing moment. But the mistakes, there's not many Man United players who come out of this with any credit whatsoever who weren't involved in making a mistake. You've got Rashford and Garnacho, who between them, I'm not sure why Rashford's over there, he's in the wrong position. Garnacho has a bad touch, Rashford gives the ball away, they're both out of the game. Bruno's in no man's land in the centre circle. And then, I mean, Ugarte has apparently got this reputation as a tough tackling centre midfielder who kicks anything in sight. Well, kick him then. Yeah. You know, come across and close that space. Again, we know what he's going to do. We've seen him do it lots of times, most pertinently against Everton earlier in the season where he ran the whole length of the field. But we know Tottenham run down that underlap channel. We know that that's what they're going to do. And then Mazraoui gets sold a dummy by, I think it's Timo Werner or it could have been Maddison on the left by basically going, I'm going to run over there, mate. Come with me, just to let Van der Ven have all that space. Yeah. And then De Ligt sort of, I mean, to be honest with you, he bottles it. To me, he just bottles it completely. Yeah. He has got to at least run on the edge of the box and collide with Van der Ven. He doesn't want to, he bottles it. And then after that, very, very clever, Dominic Solanke. He knows when Van der Ven gets in the box, he's not going to score. So as a striker, so unselfish, brilliant play. He gets Martinez, again, on a little ride. Come on, mate, come with me. We're going to run this way to leave Brendan Johnson all the space at the back post. But the biggest error of all, Diego Dalot should be hanging his head in shame. And quite frankly, if I was a fan in that Stretford end, I would be saying he shouldn't be playing for Man United anymore after that. It was that bad. If we'll take a grab, right, where we've got Dalot on almost the halfway line,
basically
virtually
as Van der Ven's setting off.
As Van der Ven's setting off, standing alongside Brendan Johnson, within a yard or two, right? When Johnson puts the ball in the net, we saw Johnson with a smile on his face before he even scored. Dalot is at least 10 yards behind him. I think it was almost 12 yards behind him. And by the time Tottenham put the ball in the net, Dalot's got his hand up apologising. He's apologising before Spurs have scored. It's just absolutely disgraceful play. And,
just quickly, is that a pace issue or is that's just an effort
he's jogging.
issue?
He's not trying. And so to go back to the point at the beginning, tactics wrong, but no effort. They have lost their faith in this manager. The players aren't running for him. To me, he's done.